If you're trying to upgrade your audio, you might be thinking of going from some regular old USB microphone to a more pro-level XLR mic. But there's one massive problem you're almost always going to run into when you're trying to make that switch. And I might just have the solution right here. Hey roomies, your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and welcome back to the Spare Tech Room, where I try to help you make better tech choices. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the FiFine SC3, which might just be the best super budget-friendly XLR audio interface and mixer. I'll show you everything that comes in the box, walk you through exactly how to set it up, and of course, run some tests on the different microphones that I have here. That way, you can ultimately decide if this is something worth you spending your money on. Now, if at any point you want to read more about the FiFine SC3, or if you just want to pick one up for yourself, I'll link to the best deals that I can find in the description box below. Using those links does help out the channel, so if you use them, I appreciate it. All right, to the top-down camera, let's crack this bad boy open. And here we are with the FiFine SC3. Now it is pronounced FiFine, even though it's spelled FiFine or FiFine. I should also mention FiFine is not paying me to make this video at all. They did send me this just to test out, but all of my thoughts, everything that I express in this video is completely my own personal opinion. They have no say over what I say in this video. So the first thing that you should be aware of when it comes to pretty much anything that's made by FiFine is that these are some very budget-friendly items. And we definitely want to keep that in mind as we're looking at this device. This is not going to cost you hundreds of dollars. And considering that, I think you're going to be surprised about what you actually get out of it. So let's just take a look around the box real quick. We've got some branding up front. It talks about having switchable RGB, customized sound effects, and individual channel control. On the sides here, we have a couple other things, just mentioning the function keys, wide compatibility. You have some funny voice effects on here, which I don't know how many of us are actually going to use that. I mean, I guess if you're kind of doing just a fun, silly stream, you might want to use some of those voice effects. On the other side, it talks about instant use and how easy it is to set up. It talks about the RGB lighting some more and the intuitive, friendly panel. But we'll test that out to be sure. So let's go ahead and just crack open the box and see exactly what comes inside. The packaging here is pretty solid, especially considering this is a very budget device. Once we open up the box though, you're presented with the user guide here, which is going to have all the information that you need about exactly what all the different plugs do on this, the different devices you can connect it to, how to work everything. So you definitely want to hold on to that so you can really get a feel for everything that this can and cannot do. Beneath that, just some styrofoam to protect the actual device. Then of course we have the mixer and audio interface. I'll set that to the side just for now, and we'll look at some of the other things that come in the box. We have here what looks like a USB cable. Of course, it's all wrapped in plastic, and you have USB-C to USB type A, it looks like, but you also have a little adapter here so you can remove that, which is not easy to remove. There we go. And that's also USB type C on that end as well. So you have a little bit of options when it comes to connecting this to different devices. Aside from that, you also get a 3.5 millimeter cable here, which looks to be a TRS to TRS cable. If you're familiar with the different types of 3.5 millimeter cables, this should work for most things. I believe for smartphones, you will need a TRS to TRRS adapter. And I don't think this comes with that in the box, so that might be something to consider. But aside from that, that's everything you get in here. The rest is just styrofoam. So let's go ahead and set this to the side and we will look at the actual unit. Now, holding this in my hands for the first time here, I can tell you that it definitely feels like a budget device. It's made out of pretty much plastic all around. It doesn't feel too flimsy though, like just kind of squeezing on this and trying to, bend it a little bit. Obviously, I'm not trying to break it, but it feels pretty sturdy. The buttons have kind of a rubber membrane to them, so they click in pretty well, but they're not gonna make a lot of noise when you press them, which is nice. And of course, you have these sliders here for volume control that They move pretty well. There is a little bit of noise when you slide them up and down. You get a little bit of friction there. So again, it's a budget device. This is not going to be something that costs hundreds of dollars. That is going to be something that you would use for professional level audio mixing or recording. Just walking around the device though, we'll talk about all the different buttons and options and everything that come in here. So you have your 48 volt phantom power on and off switch right here, which is going to be really great for if you want to switch from a dynamic microphone to a more condenser microphone, like the one that I use up here. This is a pencil condenser. It's a shotgun microphone that would require 48 volts of phantom power. So you've got that switch right here. You have an option here for auto tune, which is very interesting. I don't know if I would personally use that at all, but if you want to mess around with some auto tune, you have the option here to switch from different keys, I suppose. Below that, you have 4 different custom pads, A, B, C, and D. And what's really cool about that is that you can hold down the pad and record either yourself saying something or a sound effect. and then just save that right to the pad so you can play that back later on. And they're fully customizable, which is really awesome. Then on the other side here, you have a button for the RGB, which you can change the different colors and patterns of that. Below that, you have a voice changer, which is mainly probably just gonna be used for fun. And I don't know if you can see, but there's male voice, female voice, robot, monster, baby, and elder. We'll test those out later, but you can switch that. Then you have your microphone volume LEDs here, as well as your headphone volume, which will adjust there and show you kind of what your levels are. These are all the different sliders for everything. You have your microphone slider, your line in. So if you want to plug in another audio source, you can plug that in there. You have your headphone audio and your line out. So if you want to run this to speakers or something like that, you have a separate audio for that. Then of course, below that, you have the ability to mute all of those and to turn on and off your microphone monitoring. So if you want to hear yourself back through your microphone, you can, or you can shut that off if you don't want to hear yourself speak. Then around back, we have all the different inputs and outputs. Here we've got your OTG and PC plug. This is the USB-C plug that will go right into your computer, and that's going to both send the audio to the computer and then bring it back through. So that's kind of your in and out there. Then you have that line out, which is going to go to speakers or anything like that. Your headphone plug for your, you guessed it, headphones. Line in if you want to bring in like a tablet or something like that that has different sound effects or audio, you can bring that through there. Then you have your headset plug, which is not to be confused with your headphone plug. Headset is going to be if you have like a headset microphone. So that's what you're going to hook up into there. Then there's a switch here to toggle between dynamic and condenser microphones. If you're not familiar with the difference between dynamic and condenser microphones, I could do a whole video on that. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing something like that. But in short, if you have a kind of shotgun microphone like the one I have here, that's gonna be a condenser style microphone. Or if you have something like this, which is the Shure SM7B, which we'll be testing out later, that is a dynamic microphone. So you have the ability to toggle between the two of those. Then of course you have your microphone input here, and you can just plug your mic right into that. Last up, on the bottom of this, you just have some rubber feet here to help it not slide around on the table or wherever you have it. So that's nice, just a little added touch there. Overall, it's a really solid and compact little unit. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and I think the layout's pretty straightforward, easy to understand. Now, of course, the most important thing about an audio interface like this is not necessarily how it looks or even necessarily all the different additional bells and whistles that it has. It's how does it work? So let's go ahead and hook up a few microphones to this and we will test it out and you can hear for yourself. All right, so here we are. I think I have everything hooked up correctly. We have, of course, my shotgun condenser microphone plugged in right into the back here over XLR. We have my headset, or my headphones rather, plugged into the headphone output on the back. We switched over to condenser mode because on the back, of course, there's that condenser dynamic switch, and we turned on 48 volt phantom power. I have the volume turned up pretty high, I would say, probably at like 80%, and I'm getting a really good level over in Audacity. And then I have my headphone monitoring turned on as well, and I've turned that up a bit, not all the way, probably 75% or so. And that seems to be giving me pretty good volume back in my headphones. Now, of course, the amount that you have to turn these sliders up is gonna vary completely depending on the microphone that you're using and the headset that you're using. So what I have here is the Sennheiser 58X Jubilee headphones, and they do require a little bit of gain, not anything crazy like a pair of headphones that would have super high impedance that would require a lot of juice in order to run, but I do have to turn this up a little bit. If you're using earbuds or something like that, you would definitely want to turn that down a fair bit. And you can turn off the microphone monitoring. That's not going to make a difference for you watching this, but for me, I no longer hear myself in my headphones. So I'll turn that back on just so I can hear myself. Then we have, of course, all the different buttons and options that we have here. There is the electric button, which should auto-tune my voice, I guess. So let's test that out here. If I turn that on, whoa, that definitely sounds funny. That is, what is that, D flat? I'm not super familiar with musical instruments and the different notes, but we'll do that. We can switch over to all of our different notes here. That's G, and we'll go to F, E, that's E right here. So yeah, you get the idea. You can go ahead and switch between the different ones here, and if you hold it down, it should turn it right off, and we're back to normal. Then, of course, you have all the custom pads that I talked about earlier, and you can record audio into these and then have it play back. So if I hold down the button here and then just record anything I want, hey, make sure you subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And then I hit the button to play it back. Hey, make sure you subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. There you go. So it works great. I think the audio is a little bit less quality when you're playing that back, so something to keep in mind there. But yeah, you have 4 different pads that you can assign whatever you want to. Then, of course, we have our mute buttons down here, so we can mute And there we go. Now you can probably hear me again. So you can just mute your microphone at the touch of a button here if you need to sneeze or cough or something. You could just tap that. Over on the right side here, we have, of course, the RGB button, which will allow us to toggle between different options here. There's, I believe, even rainbow effects and stuff like that. So you can mess around with that. There's like pulsing. You can also hold it down to turn it off completely if you're not into RGB. We'll go ahead and turn it back on here just for the sake of the video. So now we have, of course, the voice changer, which if we turn that on and
we do, whoa, this is so weird to hear myself like this, but this is apparently the male voice. There's also
a female voice and
a robot voice. Oh god, that's terrible. There's a monster voice, if you want to tell scary stories, I guess.
you have the baby voice, which is, I guess, kind of a chipmunk thing. I really got to turn off the mic monitor because that is driving me crazy. And last up
Is the elder voice, which I'll just let you listen to. I've muted my mic monitoring. I don't want to hear it. But yeah, if you want to have some fun there, you can
mess around with all those. I'll just hold it down to turn it off. And yeah, just a good time, just a silly thing to play with. Now, of course, this has been testing out the condenser microphone that I have here, which condenser microphones are typically a little bit easier to run if you have 48 volt phantom power. So we're going to test out a dynamic microphone, specifically one that's really notoriously difficult to run, which is the Shure SM7B here. Now, this is a absolutely legendary microphone. It's one of the best on the market that you can get for most people that are into podcasting or video production or anything like that. But it does require a lot of juice to run. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this up here and we'll test it out and see if this really inexpensive FiFine SC3 is powerful enough to run the legendary Shure SM7B. All right, and here we are with the Shure SM7B. Now, I am looking at my levels here and they are coming in pretty hot. I had to turn it down actually just a little bit, take it to maybe 75%. And in Audacity right here, I am hitting very high. In fact, I might have to turn it down even further. So I am absolutely shocked that this is as powerful as it is, that it's able to run the Shure SM7B with no cloud lifter or anything like that. I have it set to maybe 75% on the microphone level, and I'm hitting beyond -6 dB in Audacity. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Does this sound good? Is this working all right? In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just crank up the gain all the way to the max. Let's see if this is too loud. I'm going to pull up Audacity on my computer here. And yeah, we're coming in pretty hot. I want to make sure I don't clip the microphone. But let's see if we're getting any kind of background noise, any hiss, anything like that. So let's just leave this for a second. I'm not hearing anything really in my headphones. There's the slightest hiss, but really I don't think anything that's going to come through on the microphone. Really, you're going to get more room noise just in general being in a spare bedroom. But yeah, turning that back down here, it sounds really good. I am honestly blown away by this thing. So okay, let's go ahead and talk about some of the pros and cons and ultimately who I think this audio interface is for. First off, the price. It is insanely affordable to get you into kind of the XLR professional audio world. It's super simple to set up and use, like seriously perfect for beginners. The sound quality, I think, is genuinely good, especially for the cost. Your audio is going to be clean enough for streaming or podcasting, doing voiceovers. You also have that 48 volt phantom power in here, which means that you're going to have the ability to run all different kinds of microphones. Now, of course, there are some cons, I think. First one, super obvious. There's only one XLR input. So if you are trying to podcast with yourself and a buddy, you're going to run into some problems there. Also, the build quality, even though it is really solid for being as inexpensive as it is pretty cheap. It's made out of plastic. It's probably not going to last you a million years. It could, easily fall apart if you drop it or smash it or whatever. So it's definitely not something I would recommend for taking out and about, although you really shouldn't. It's not made for that. Either way, you definitely want to handle this with care. But again, if you do end up breaking it, it's so inexpensive, you could buy a bunch of these for the price of just a typical interface. So if it breaks, it's not the end of the world. Another thing that it doesn't have though is true audio mixing. So yes, you can adjust your microphone and if you have a line input and a few other things here, but if you're trying to set up different audio sources in your computer, this does not come with software to kind of route that and set that all up. So that's something to consider as well. You'll probably want to use some other third-party audio routing software. It also doesn't have any built-in features like equalization or compression or anything like that. So again, you'll need third-party software to do all that. It's really just the basics here. So you've really got to weigh all that up and decide if saving all of that money to get into the world of XLR microphones with a seemingly good quality interface here is going to be worth it. So yeah, who do I think the FiFine SC3 is for? Well, I think it's just that. If you are a beginner, if you're someone who is just getting into making YouTube videos or podcasting or what have you, or streaming, and you don't want to have to spend a ton of money on your setup, you want to get in, but still have a really good quality, then I think the FiFine SC3 is perfect for that. In fact, for myself, as someone who, yes, I do have a really expensive camera and microphones and all this other stuff, I'm still going to use this personally over at my desk. On my YouTube recording station that I have going on here, I have all of the high-end equipment, but over on the desk, I'll just throw this with a decent microphone and a really solid webcam. I actually reviewed a really phenomenal webcam by ObsBot that I have over on my desk now. So I'll link to that video if you want to check it out up here in the cards and at the end of this one. But if you're looking to just get a budget device, a whole budget setup that is going to give you really good quality without spending a ton of money, I think this is perfect. Now, who is this not for? Well, it's just going to be the opposite of that person. If you are trying to step up to the next level and do some real professional level work when it comes to audio, then obviously you don't want to get a very budget entry-level device like this. But again, it could still be helpful for somebody who is on that higher level. If you want just something that's cheap, inexpensive, that you can just have at your desk or take with you or throw around without worrying about it breaking, I think it could be really helpful for that. So look, it's definitely not perfect and it's definitely not for everyone, but if you are looking to get into the world of XLR microphones at a budget, then I do recommend this. In fact, if you want to check it out for yourself, I'm going to link to the best deals that I can find in the description box below. I recently saw that it was on a pretty significant sale, so you might want to check that out sooner than later. If you have any questions about the FiFine SC3, let me know. I'm seriously just a dude in his spare bedroom talking about all the little gadgets that I like, so if you have questions, I will do my best to help you out personally. If you have any other budget devices that you want me to test out and maybe compare to the FiFine SC3, also let me know in the comments. And of course, if you want to see more videos just like this, make sure you subscribe. All right, my dude. I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.